Okay, number 9, council receive a presentation on the East End Street and Long Street Complete Streets Draft Plan and consider setting a public hearing. It was going to be December the 16th, and now I think we said December the...
January the 6th.
I'm sorry.
January 6th.
January. January the 2nd, is that what it was? 6th, January the 6th, okay. All right.
Good afternoon. Before I start talking, I would like to publicly thank Lynn Raker and Diana McGroby for their help with this project. I'm going to be talking, but if it wasn't for Lynn, the project wouldn't have gotten to where it is, so thank you. In response to a high number of traffic collisions, both vehicular and pedestrian, DOT a while back conducted a spot safety study on East End Street between Arlington and Long. The spot safety study had recommended prohibiting some left turns in the area, but we felt that a more comprehensive study may be better suited if funding could be found. So in 2012, the city partnered with DOT and our Cabarrus Rowan MPO to fund such a study. The MPO paid 80% of the cost, and both the city and DOT each paid 10%. The total cost of the project was $120,000. And the study boundaries were expanded to include East End Street from I-85 to Church Street, Long Street from Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue to Bringle Ferry Road, and the study also looked at left turns at the square as a consideration. So in 2013, selected design workshop from Asheville out of a group of about 5 firms to be the consultant. We also appreciate their work, their time and effort that they've put into making this successful in our community. Selected a steering committee. Both Mayor Woodson and Councilman Kennedy served on that committee. And I noticed there are some committee members in the audience, and we also appreciate all of their time and effort that was put into the project. And we started data collection. Extensive public input was utilized throughout the process. We actually had 5 public input sessions. We had a general session at the beginning here in the council chambers. We held 2 at Calvary Baptist Church. We also met individually, or we contacted property owners along East End Street individually, had a drop-in meeting here, and for those who couldn't attend, we've contacted those, had discussions either by email, phone, or meetings. And we also held, during the process, a charrette in which the public had a chance to give input. We've had good press coverage as well. So we feel like we've gotten a good idea of what the community is looking for in the plan. On November 19th, we presented the draft plan to the steering committee. They then voted to present the plan to City Council and set a public hearing for a later date. During the time between this meeting and the public hearing date, we would like to make the plan available online for the public to view, and we'll also be making further contact with those citizens that asked us to make changes and specifically address what has been done to for those areas prior to the public hearing. Here this evening to present the draft plan to you are Glenn Walters and Drake Fowler from Design Workshop, and so I will turn it over to them.
Thank you, Wendy. We're really glad to be here and to see all these great projects you have brewing downtown. We believe that the project we've been working on with you all can be equally as catalytic and really present Salisbury in a whole new way. Drake, over here, will be running our slideshow, and I'm going to do just a brief introduction and hand over the guts of the plan to him. As Wendy mentioned, we worked on Innis Street. It's obviously a very important street for your city, connecting you down to 85. It's a gateway into downtown. There's many existing businesses that front along it that we respect and want to accommodate. There's issues associated with pedestrian connectivity, getting across the street safely, as well as just the general character and image of that street that we wanted to focus on as part of this study. We also looked at Long Street, and it was sized to handle commercial activity that never really happened, and in the process, in many respects, separated neighborhoods from each other. So part of what we were looking at here was just to look at how we could possibly reconnect these neighborhoods, how we could make Long Street more of a neighborhood street again, right? The traffic counts don't really support the width of that road as it exists, and how we could make it safer for kids to cross the street to get to the swimming pool, amongst other things. With the community and with the steering committee, a vision was established. We relied heavily on the ideas that NCDOT has put together related to creating complete streets. It's something we're doing in a lot of cities and towns around North Carolina, and it's about creating a safer street. It's about sizing things appropriately so that you have adequate space for the automobile, but don't give up the whole corridor to the automobile. Have space for bicycles, have space for pedestrians. And part of what we think about, too, is just the image and character of the street and the streetscape, and hope to create something beautiful along with these fundamental things to really help Salisbury's image. We engaged in a pretty thorough process. We had on our team a traffic consultant, VHB, who surveyed the situation out there on both of these streets to try to understand if there was room within these streets to put them on a diet, which is to change the amount of lanes or the width of the lanes or how turning movements work, so that we might find space to put into more multimodal use. They also looked at to make sure that we were accommodating the automobile effectively, and so that we had proper access into businesses and into the neighborhoods. As Wendy mentioned, we worked really closely with the steering committee and with the community. I think our plan reflects the ideas that the community had for these streets. In fact, I think we had some ideas at times that were a little different, and engaged in additional public meetings with parts of the community to make sure that we really understood things right, and we were creating a plan that was really tailored to the neighborhoods that these streets went through. Part of our job is to help everyone visualize these solutions, and as you'll see later on, we created a lot of visual tools so people could see what we were all about and how we might create a pretty amazing change out there. And one of the things I want to make sure to add is that in this process, we entered into it with the idea that this needed to be value-oriented, that the community in particular asked us, and we were sort of motivated to think of cost-effective solutions that could be attainable, that we wouldn't just create wholesale changes like cracking all the curbs out and doing brand new curbs, which is hugely expensive. But we found out through study and design that we could actually create a lot of change just in many cases by repainting things and not having to move curbs. So, and we also wanted to, in our design standards and guidelines, to propose alternative treatments that could be selected by the communities. So there's different material choices that will enable either more cost-effective ways to get a lot of this work accomplished, or if the money's available, to promote a high level of quality and finish. So there's options there as the project moves forward. We use a keypad polling process to really enable as many people as possible to provide input. We find it to be really effective, and it gives us evidence that we can then use to support our design decisions. I think in general, most everyone thought that if we could improve the pedestrian and bike component of the street, that it would make for a better street. And that improving the pedestrian safety and circulation was our number one concern, but we also wanted the community also wanted it to be beautiful in the end and to really promote Salisbury in a really great way.
Great. So I'm gonna walk you through
several sections of the corridor that illustrate some of the design proposals that we have in the plan. And I think it's easier to kind of see this in a before-after format. I will reiterate that, we really started with this image and looked for different elements that we could use, and the goal was to create a cost-effective, implementable design, and at the same time, maybe we could totally change the character of the street. I also will add a key partner in all of this is NCDOT. These are state streets, and so we do need to play by their rules. And so several times there were desires of the community and us, like maybe adding additional traffic signals to provide a safe crossing for pedestrians. And NCDOT, there's certain processes and requirements that need to be met in those areas. And so that's why we rely heavily on our traffic engineer to help us navigate those, and I'll highlight some of those as we go along. So just to kind of highlight some of the elements that are happening here, this is South Long at Bank Street, and so first we wanted to make crossings very clear, and so that when pedestrians attempt to cross the street, the automobiles know, hey, this is also a zone that people are walking. That was highlighted time and time again in our public process. Two, when we looked at this wide street, there's actually a lot of opportunities in the width. This particular section of the street has 7,400 trips per day, which is actually pretty low for the cross section that we have here. So this was an opportunity for us to put this road on a diet and lose a lane so that we could install a median that would further organize traffic and break down the scale of the street, making it easier for pedestrians to cross. And that also enables us to provide on-street parking and a bike lane. We did actually mock this up during the fall festival and provided on-street parking on the street, and through some of our social media outlets it was met with positive remarks. I will add on this section at South Long, it does give us an opportunity to legitimize some of the parking that's already happening out there with the church, and they park out there on Sundays, and so this would make a more consistent street section on South Long. Another area that came up that said there was a lot of issues is with the community pool here at Monroe Street and South Long. That is a long distance for little legs to cross to get to the pool, and when you look at that street, where are you supposed to cross? There's not really any indicator of where's the safe crossing. And so by doing some of the bump outs, by creating crosswalks and enhanced planning, this could be a great intersection that is more clear and could be safer for pedestrians. This is a good example of where it would be nice to have a light here, and we looked at that, and it did not meet the requirements from the NCDOT. One alternative we are proposing is using rapid flashing beacons that can either be activated by motion of a pedestrian approaching the intersection, and I do have an example of that on one of the next slides, or it can be a push button activation to let motorists know that a pedestrian is going to attempt to cross, and really you can provide the stop bars and they can stop for the pedestrian. This is North Long, and this is another example, and you can see actually this was taken when Rowan Helping Ministries was building their facility. The concern on this part is that there is a lot of truck traffic in this section and a lot of pedestrian traffic in this area. And so initially we kind of thought you could narrow the street, give more space to the pedestrian, but we actually heard from Rowan Helping Ministries that a bike lane would be great because a lot of their patrons come via bike, and providing a safe route and a space for them in the street would be helpful. One advantage is the width here. It does allow us to do that without necessarily adjusting the curbs.
Just curious, with the bike lane, would it actually be painted as you're painting it there? Will it actually be painted?
Well, they could be. In our plan, we do have them painted, but providing the space would be excellent.
I think, yeah, in all cases, if I can go back to like this image, for instance, the bike lane could be painted a great color, and that could provide something really unique and bring a lot of presence to the bike, or it could just be the outside edges painted. The crosswalks could be of real brick. They could be of stamped material. You could do a pattern with paint inside of them, or they could just be standard crosswalks, right? And the same thing happens with the sidewalk. So we're kind of showing an aesthetic treatment here that we think would be pretty amazing, but depending upon where priorities are and monies that are available, all of this a lot of this can be accomplished simply by using just, painting the edges and making all these safety features more clear.
This would be the example if we did decide in this section that we wanted to narrow the road and give more space to the pedestrian. It really changes the character of the street. The other section that really prompted this study was at Shaver. There was several pedestrian auto incidents, and so we took a good hard look at this section. This is an area that would be excellent for a stoplight. Unfortunately, it does not work with the current setup there that the DOT would allow an additional traffic signal installed.
So fatalities don't matter to NCDOT is what you're saying?
It's
You have to have a certain amount, I suppose.
we have to have a quota of fatalities. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
But there are areas like this where it doesn't necessarily warrant for the vehicles to stop, that there are methods that are being used around the state. Like this is an example of the rapid flashing beacon. And we've also found with additional signage that says yielding to the pedestrian can be fined, that when these lights activate and you provide a stop bar for vehicles will stop and yield to someone, crossing the crosswalk. There's also a lot of other things going on here. There's space within here. I'll clarify. This is East Innis. That there's an ability to create a median on East Innis without necessarily limiting a lot of the access to the adjacent businesses. We wanted to create a median to shrink the scale of the street, and create a really nice aesthetic character that would take people from I-85 into downtown and take that, why I came to Salisbury for the first time was to see the downtown. Bringing some of that character down to the highway could be really fantastic. And so, but how do we do that without necessarily blocking all the left-hand turns into businesses? So we looked at the driveway pattern in there and found areas that we could add planted space. And this also enables us to create pedestrian refuge islands if people can only get halfway across the street.
Also, just along the edges to help with the willy-nilly crossing of the street, there's an idea of possibly some low fencing and planting to get people to go to the intersection to make those crossings. And that could be really decorative as well and really help to frame the street as it comes up from 85 into downtown.
The next part we looked at, it was the square. And, downtown is an absolute gem. This is difficult. This is a difficult place for pedestrians to cross. The crossing here is at 60 feet. And so we wanted to look at this space on how we could make this more of a destination as you arrive into downtown, and where, again, can we find space that's maybe underutilized and help it lift the image and character of this intersection. And so we took the spaces that are usually at the ends of the on-street parking and created bump outs. And this reduces the crossing at the square from 60 feet to 44 feet, which when you're trying to get across the street while the pedestrian signal is on, that's a lot less. It's 16 feet more narrow. And so this would also provide areas that we could provide planters, trees, plantings that could lift the image of the space. And then using some special paving techniques, we could really make this a very much more attractive intersection and more safe, pedestrian friendly. One huge issue that we studied.
Could we go back?
Yeah.
To the prior slide? Before I forget to mention it, the part where the rubber hits the road, I've seen a lot of street designs that look great, but then the first 18-wheeler that comes through and screws up the curb or knocks over the planter or intersects with a tree or whatever else, it's not the use of that street. Practicality and what's on the paper are different. Can we save that as a parking lot type thing we come back to? Because
Sure.
I love the way this looks.
Yeah.
But I can also envision the planters being run over by 18-wheelers trying to turn right at the square.
Sure.
So don't want to get you off your topic, but let's come back to it.
Yes. 'Cause
Thank you.
I think there's a solution for that.
Okay.
We have an app for that.
Good.
So left-hand turns at the square. This was looked at through VHB, our traffic consultant, extensively. They looked at everyone's ideas of how this would happen, and it kind of boils down to these facts. Any solution that allows left-hand turns requires a dedicated left-hand turn lane. To get that to fit within the square, we're going to lose 11 to 16 parking spaces. That was not very popular, to lose parking spaces in downtown. Without a dedicated left-hand turn lane, what happens is during peak rush hours, you get excessive stacking and it starts gumming up other intersections. So the line just gets so long. We also heard that we needed to put a priority on how can we make downtown more walkable, and from both residents and business owners alike. And so we arrived at this bump out situation because it optimizes that space at the intersection that you're not using for parking and is really kind of dead zone, so we could reclaim that without really eliminating any parking spaces. And so that's where our study came on the left hands at the square. So we came up with a pretty extensive document. I just wanted to walk you through just some of the pages that we looked at. We did document and catalog all of our public meeting comments and keypad polling. Each one of these visuals that we talk about, we outlined the different elements that we're implementing in each of these scenes. And then we documented block by block some of the issues that we saw as a design group, and then showed some of the strategies that we think could be implemented from a plan view standpoint, so that you can kind of see what is changing per block. In addition, we had our traffic engineers look at Shaver and Clay and create a plan that could be easily implemented in the very short term. Then we also looked at the material choices and created some basic standards of how to handle different situations as you approach the intersections. Took all of that and quantified up opinion of probable costs. So I can tell you the quantities are right. Obviously, with the market and the way that you find, this is a good ballpark figure for costs. When we look at that, I will mention a couple of just basic facts that this is a 24 block study, and these costs do account for all 24 blocks. Two, what we've found, we've accomplished these without really moving curb lines and changing the stormwater system. From our experience, if you start doing that, it's about $500,000 a block. And so those are some of the things that we tried to focus on when we created this plan. And that's it.
Can we go back to South Long a minute? South Long Street.
Almost there.
That one.
And your plan, okay. All right. Just want to make sure that, did the church speak to, did Calvary Baptist put their input into it?
First
I'm sorry,
Calvary.
first, okay.
We have been working with them, and we will continue to do so as we refine the plan. This is very conceptual. We know their need for parking during church services and also for funerals. And right now they have a process where they leave from the opposite direction on their funeral processions. And that's something we'll have to work with them on. And I think there's an option for doing that with the current design that we're proposing. But and William's here tonight, and he's been involved in the steering committee and all the meetings we've had at First Calvary Baptist Church. And so he's well aware of what their needs are and what the plan proposes, and I think we'll come up with a good solution for that.
We're basically taking a lane out, right? A full lane.
It is, but there will be a turn lane at the intersections. And they will actually have marked parking on street, which is something they'd like to have now at the church, but it's dangerous to mark it because there's a lane there, and people wouldn't expect it as they're driving to find marked spaces or cars sitting there. So they are allowed to park there on Sundays and for funerals, but it's not the best situation safety-wise.
We did have a midsection bump out at one point, and that would have really kind of put a gum up the funeral procession where they line up, and so we did remove that from the plan, and so that it's just solid parking in front of the church now.
Lynn, do you have an idea how many spaces would be created with that particular cross section off the top of your head?
How many spaces? Do you have a count on that? I don't think
back.
it shows in the graphic plan how many spaces there are. I think it's about 8 or 9.
I know a lot of things. I don't know that offhand about the plan. I don't know.
Say,
Now, the parking would not on street would not just be in front of First Calvary. It would be the length of the whatever improvements are made.
That's correct, except in front of driveways. We would accommodate those. We did try that out at October Tour a year ago, and it actually worked very fluidly. We were not surprised, but gratified that it did work so well.
The way the road is out there right now, the radiuses at the intersections are really big. You have big lanes, and you have an extra lane. And there's no crosswalk, so it's real easy just to go as fast as you want through there. So these improvements will make the road safer, and they have a traffic calming quality about them as well, and provide places for people to park, especially for those homes that front there along, or those uses that front along the road.
So are there parking spaces then along the entire, both on the left and the right? Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
And on East Ennis are the business owners. The reason I say this, Bill Berger and I years ago were on a committee for the sign ordinance. And almost every business owner was at my business talking about the sign ordinance, and I'm not getting that on this right now. I'm surprised. Are people okay? Are they happy? Are they?
We've made extra effort to contact the businesses. We've actually been in conversation with business owners even today. And so we are hoping that we are addressing their concerns as we go through the process.
And there are very few major changes to their access, and that's what they're concerned about, ingress and egress. And there are just a couple that mostly on corner properties that they might not be able to turn one way or the other into the property or out of the property, but there's an alternative access on a side street. So for the most part, that we found that they're very understanding about it, and today, talking to some, they're even supporting the change as a good change because they're worried about their customers leaving the property and having trouble turning left against traffic or turning right against traffic.
Okay.
I will say that I think it was at last year's October tour, I parked in the trial space, and it was great. In fact, I parked beside of the house of someone who's here. And I was a little surprised at how cool it worked. Secondly, I think extending the character of our downtown eastward, our hamburger mile from the interstate to the bridge is not lovely. In fact, I thought it was treeless until one day I decided I was going to drive down there and look for trees. We have a bunch of trees down there, but for some reason, because it's so broad and because there are so many hamburger signs, I don't notice the trees. And so I think extending some lovely touches through there would make Salisbury seem as warm and welcoming as we are from the interstate on in. It's almost like you get off the interstate, where's this cool downtown I've heard about? Well, this surely isn't it. And you just have to have faith and keep coming to get there. And so I think it would really enhance our visitability to extend that eastward. You mentioned that the square is a 60-foot crossing. It's football season. You guys know that I hate sports. But that's more than a first down.
Yeah, it is.
45 feet is a first down, am I right?
It's even more than a personal foul, I think.
Yeah. So that's more than a first down. Did somebody say it's two first downs? All right.
That's right.
60 feet is 2 first downs.
All right, that's a long way to go.
First down and a half.
How long does
No,
it take to
2
get a
first
first down in football? A
Oh,
long time.
it's rough.
Talking about the Panthers or the Green Bay Packers?
It is a long way to walk in the heart of our downtown to get across the street. So I'm very in favor of ameliorating that as well. And then finally, when we do have the public hearing, assuming that we're going to vote on that in a minute, I wonder if we might provide the names of some cities who have implemented similar strategies so that we can talk to them and say, we love it, or if we did it again, we might not do so much, or whatever. I think that might be helpful for us in making a determination when that point comes. So if
We have some examples that we can give you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I'd like to commend you guys. There have been many times that I've interacted with folks who want to come in with the granite curbs and all the higher end touches. You have very seriously taking the charge of being a value, taking a value approach to this, and I very much appreciate it. I was expecting $500,000 per block in cost. Obviously, the issue of storm drains and such, moving those things, they're not cheap, but for the amount of space that you've covered, I realize it's not an insignificant sum, but a lot of benefit for not a lot of cost considering the area you cover. So I want to thank you for taking that charge to heart.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions. In terms of implementation, are you all going to make recommendations based on where the problems were, that those are the priority projects, and then create I guess, standalone budgets for a block, say the Schaefer and maybe the blocks down near the First Calvary Baptist Church, the Lincoln Pool, and maybe around the Rowan Helping Ministries areas. Those seem to be, in my mind, the most critical in terms of safety for pedestrians.
Yeah, we've definitely discussed those areas. It's with the road diet, you can get the crosswalks right, but that's kind of something that you have to take on and kind of a bigger chunk. But we have created plans for those areas, and when we did our cost estimate, we did it by category of thing, but we also did block by block, knowing that on other projects that we worked with, sometimes you really only have the opportunity to do a block, and there are certain elements that can be implemented, and so we did provide that as well.
But I think what Drake is saying and what you're asking for is you don't have to do all this the whole length right now.
Right.
You can
That's
do
what
a
I was
simple
hoping,
crosswalk
yes.
and maybe get the pedestrian beacon up to help the
Right.
situation that you have out there right now.
Well, I was thinking also for demonstration purposes, it really would show the citizens. And then another question is, since DOT has acknowledged that their street coming through our community is a hazard, are they then willing to provide matching funds for the implementation of this? Is that something that we're working toward, or is that something we can be getting started with?
Well, they funded this study to start
Right, I
with.
knew that
Yeah, they-
because we only paid 10% of it. But I'd like to find out if there are ways of implementing it as well in a similar manner that then the community can just partner with them and we can do more.
For certain sections, specifically East Ennis between Shaver and Clay, there may be some funds available through spot safety, since this is an area that they've identified. That's something we would have to get with DOT, and they look at a benefit cost ratio. So there may be certain elements they're willing to participate in and maybe do a match with the city. But it's something that would require further discussion.
And so then projecting forward, say after we have our public hearing, then is there a timeline that we're working on or under that we must do this project, or?
Yeah, there's not. The plan was developed to provide us it's a conceptual plan, so that as funding becomes available, we have something that we can look to and say we would like to implement this.
Right,
you
if
know, as
the
part of-
opportunity came
Correct.
forward with these funds. That's wonderful then. Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellent plan.
I know we have a great deal of support for this plan, and I just want to make sure we get it out to the entire public so they can come in and talk to us about it. I know we got beat up on some other things we changed, Brown Avenue and that type thing. We want to make sure this is well put out before we adopt it. And that's why we're having the public hearing, of course.
Beat my brain was on Brenner Avenue also. We're thinking the same way. Okay, what I think, like Pete said, the most important thing is this January the 6th hearing, that we let everybody know to come because we really want to hear from them. Can we do anything extra, like anything on the radio maybe, or anything? I know we do the newspaper, or maybe announcement on the radio, because we got beat up pretty bad on Brenner Avenue, and I'd like to make sure that this is a big, it's a pretty big change for our city. Make sure everybody understands, because what always happens is nobody says anything, and then we start implementing. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh," it's come out from everywhere. It's what me.
Could we do it on
Well, no, the sky's falling, so
social media?
we need
as
to
a
do something
possibility?
to make sure January the 6th the citizens come out,
That would be an
because we want to hear their
excellent thing to
comments. I think it's really important we hear their comments. Myra, help us with that maybe, see if we can really get that word out for January the 6th.
I think there's something important to remember in that too, and we love these pictures, and it would make your city, I think, look really awesome. But there's fundamental things that have to happen, right? Getting crosswalks out there and alerting the driver that there's pedestrians in the space, or some things that I think are a little bit different than creating beautiful planters in the bulb outs at the downtown intersection. So
they're more important.
Yeah, that's right.
because
This
they're
was
safety.
a lot about creating
Absolutely.
a safer street, in addition to also looking at how we can enhance the image of downtown in the process.
I love the plan. We just want to make sure the citizens love the plan.
That question I asked you earlier, you said you had some ideas about that.
Well, it is, we struggle with that because big, wide radiuses allow trucks easy access, but it also allows vehicles to go around corners at a much higher rate of speed. And so we're always kind of working with the traffic engineer to find that right medium. In downtowns, we've worked in commercial districts where that curve actually goes flush, so you're not necessarily beating up the curb every time, and then pulling those planters off of the radius so that at that point the truck is still going straight. So we've implemented those in pretty tight like mall and business districts, that you can still get trucks in to deliver the products that people are trying to sell and still make them look great in terms of for the pedestrian. So I think and we actually have some pictures of examples of that we can send to Wendy.
Wendy, is there is there a way to draw it such that you can, we've got an issue, I think, behind the Bank of North Carolina now, where trucks have come in and they're just tearing up the curb back there. We've seen it in other places there at the Wachovia or Wells Fargo branch at Harris Teeter, repeatedly going into the grass, creating a mess at that corner. I don't know if it's speed. I don't know if it's the people coming the other direction they're trying to avoid. I don't know what it is, but this isn't something new that no other place has ever talked
Right.
about. Is there some sort of way to make sure? What I don't want to do is, if we spend this money to do some things to make this town look better, that 3 years from now they look worse because they've not been installed properly.
Yes, we actually do have turning templates, and they vary for different vehicle sizes that we can overlay on a plan view and see the path that the truck would have to take. They have a minimum turn-in radius, and we can look at that.
Okay.
Would it be possible to put anything vertical there, like a bollard? I know I see that in some places where they're set back, but you still have a vertical piece that sometimes they can see better than.
Yeah, they kind of go where they go. I think it's better just to plan for those radiuses, as Wendy mentioned and Drake mentioned, and just have a great design that acknowledges the fact that truck drivers don't always do what you want them to do.
I think one other thing too, I was thinking about, John, you might want to look into this. What's it going to do to our landscaping folks? Are you going to have an extra person on the budget? Or maybe you can look at that for January the 6th. Talk to your folks about that.
Obviously, if you take a look at the plan, there were many elements in the plan that's not even related to landscaping, as was alluded to, whether it was the fencing or whether it was the crosswalks or the bulb outs. So there was a number of elements in there that could be implemented even without the additional plantings. So obviously, when you add those plantings, if you add that much, it does have a financial impact. And yes, I would fully expect that we would have to add some personnel just because of the sheer volume there.
Mayor, if I could, I'd like to make a motion that we set the public hearing for January 6, 2015 regarding East Ennis and Long Complete Street drafts plan.
I second that motion, and we thank the consultants. You've done a lot of work in our city, and we appreciate that. Our staff, some of you, we see some of them, the other staff members who also have worked. Also, the steering committee, I would like to have them to stand and be recognized. Anyone who's had a part in this plan, just stand and be recognized, because you put a lot of time and work in them. And we ask you to return on January 6th.
Thank
Thank you.
Now, we have a motion and a second, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All in favor of January the 6th for a public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay? Thank you, gentlemen. Oh, plan looks nice, it really does. Just got to fine tune it and make sure the public is okay.